Drop it. All right, back. I do that like half the time. Welcome to the Young Turks.
We're back from yesterday.
Well, we are. Jen Cougar, John Idarola, Farron Cousins. Farron's, of course, with the Ring of Fire, and also Farron Balanced. and of course, John's with Damage Report. All right, guys, hell of a show for you guys today. Joe Biden did something pretty good, 2% good, 10% good. We'll talk about it. Republicans have done many bad things. Charlie Kirk with a crazed attack on Michelle Obama and others. He took a position that a majority of the country agrees with and turned it into a disaster. Okay, so all that being said, John.
Charlie Kirk messed up. He should have just tweeted that and he could have made $30,000 from Elon Musk.
Yeah, it's another story that's later in the program.
We'll talk about that later. Okay, for now though, let's talk about something really important. Student debt cancellation is back and it's bigger than ever, and roughly half of that sentence was true. Now, Biden did announce that they are doing something, specifically wiping out $39 billion worth of student loan debt for about 804,000 borrowers. Those are both obviously large numbers, and if you don't put them in context, the full severity of the problem, they sound objectively good. We are gonna put them in context, but no, this is what he's doing. It's gonna be very helpful. We've already, earlier in the day, we're getting comments from people about how that's going to affect their debt, finally free them from that burden. And there's some other good details here as well, especially that unlike the prior rounds of student debt cancellation, you are not gonna have to go through any kind of application process to qualify for this. If you do qualify, your debts will be automatically discharged. This is basically like a ramping up an extension of previously existing income-driven repayment plans that can result in your debt being forgiven that were only really like there technically. It didn't actually work that way for the vast majority of people. The system was set up to not work. This is patching that so that people will actually be able to qualify. And I want to give you just a few more details, including a statement from the Secretary of Education, Miguel Cardona, who said, for far too long, borrowers fell through the cracks of a broken system that failed to keep accurate track of their progress towards forgiveness. And so they said now they're going to take like partial payments that you might do. Those will now count. There's a variety of different ways that they're going to sort of juice the numbers to make sure that more people qualify for the forgiveness. They say that they're addressing historic failures in which qualifying payments under those plans should have brought borrowers closer to qualifying for debt forgiveness, but were not actually properly accounted for. There are some other details of things they're going to do beyond just this announcement, but this is what we've got as of today.
Yeah, so this leaves us in the usual conundrum, which is you want to give credit to them for doing this. Over 800,000 people affected. That's no joke. That's a lot of good people that are going to be very relieved today. So thank you, Joe Biden. Credit where credit is due. Now, but I have to give you context, and the context is there's $37 billion of loans that are outstanding. So this is about 2%, or 37 million people affected. So it's about 2% of the people that are getting relief. So now, they haven't done it too badly in this case, right? But in a lot of cases, mainstream media will say historic, the greatest thing ever, the whole thing is solved, mission accomplished, let's move on. In this case, the articles that I read were more balanced, right? So I want to say credit for the 2%, but I really would love to address the other 98%. Now, to be again more fairness to Joe Biden, he has also done things in the past that have addressed about 3.4 million other people out of a total sample then of about 40 million. And so that's actually not 2%, that gets close to 10%, which is like that's the number I keep telling you, between 5 and 15% is what Democratic administrations do of their promises very consistently. And so, and here we are again at this point. And I like that he did the other ones too, but man, I'd love the other 90%. So that's your truthful reporting that no one will like, because the moderate Democrats will scream, oh, it's never good enough for you progressives. Oh, we give you 2% and you want the other 98. And progressives will say, oh, you're helping Joe Biden by pretending this is real when it's nothing counts, etc. I mean, both sides constantly. And the right wing's like, helping students, we despise students. They're not even billionaires, right? So the truth doesn't make anyone happy, but nevertheless, it's still the truth. So Farron.
I think that's the best way to put that is no matter what you say about this, you're gonna make 98% of everybody else mad with your statement. But you're absolutely right. Like, listen, Biden had nothing to lose at this point to just go as big as humanly possible. And that's one of the things obviously that makes these, means testing and all of the other, smaller parts of it. That's what makes it so frustrating is he could have come out and said, listen, we're gonna forgive the student loan debt of just one person. I'm gonna pick a random person in this country. I'm forgiving their student loan debt. And conservatives would still be up in arms over that. They would say this is ridiculous, you can't forgive the debt. So it could have been one person or it could have been everybody getting their debt forgiven, and Biden's gonna be targeted by these Republicans. So why not just go big? They're gonna challenge it no matter what you do. So try to give us as much as possible. And again, you wanna say this is great for the 800,000 people who are going to get this relief. They need it. It's going to change their lives, absolutely, no doubt about it. But there's also gonna be a lot of people right on that cusp, because again, this is income based, that aren't gonna get it. Yeah. And they're gonna be left out because they're just a few dollars away from being in the same kind of financial dire straits as some of the other folks, wondering why not me? Why suddenly, because I make $100 more a month than these people, am I not eligible? So you could have gone bigger, and that's the thing. You can always go bigger and then have it scaled down. But when you start with it already scaled down, that only leaves room to exclude more people as it moves forward.
Yeah, I would say, Farron, if the students wanted the entirety of their debt to be canceled without conservatives having a problem with it, they should have had their student loan debt come in the form of PPP loans. Then it would have been fine. You could just wiped out the whole thing. Nobody would have a problem with it. But yeah, you're right. There are people who are not gonna make enough money to really have a secure economic existence, but just enough to not be able to cancel out their loans based on this. And also, even if they do get the forgiveness, remember, it's not like it's an instantaneous thing. They've been making payments for a literal decade. I don't want people to be burdened by student debt for 10 years. I don't want people to have to wait a decade to be able to buy a home or move to a new city or start a business or change jobs without being terrified what's gonna happen to you. I don't want people to be burdened by that literally at all. And I'll also remind people, as we're adding context, so you threw out some of the overall numbers. For context, it's not like Biden's plan was, that's it, no more student debt. He wasn't canceling all of the student debt. He was canceling a good chunk of it, a percentage, but it wasn't a radical extremist plan, and this is a tiny fraction of that. One more bit of context, by the way, of the $1.78 trillion in outstanding student loan debt, which, look, some of that is public, some of it is private, so it's not apples to apples or whatever, but he's canceling the $39 billion. I just looked up randomly. The F-35 has cost over $1.5 trillion. One plane, $1.5 trillion. A country of students balanced against one plane that might or might not work. So it is frustrating. And look, they do have next steps that they're gonna take. They're gonna have a new income-driven repayment plan called the SAVE plan that they think is going to fit in a lot more students. And they also say, by the way, that they're gonna make student debt one of the cornerstones of the 2024 campaign, which you would assume would be accompanied with other plans, and you can guarantee that it'll be accompanied with proposals that if you put us back in power, we'll do something then. So maybe we will see more.
Yeah, it's funny that you came to the same number. I did it through the math of how many people were affected and got to 2% for today's action. And John's numbers are about 1.78 trillion in debt, and 39 billion was relieved today, so that's 2.1%. Gets you the same 2% number, right? And so for a Democrat, 2% is 2% change is considered historic and miraculous. But anyways, like I said, when you put in the earlier stuff, it's about 10. Now, the point that John made about future stuff, I mean, there is that next proposal is pretty good. It doesn't relieve all your debt. I would definitely go further, but it would reduce your payments in half for everyone and then wipe them out after you've paid for 10 years. That's good progress. A lot better, but not yet. Okay, so look, the way that they framed it, it seemed half believable because sometimes Democrats make promises. I go, there's no way they're gonna do that. Total marketing gimmick, 0% chance, right? No, the way that they explained this, the context made me think, they might even do that, okay? But then John dashed all my hopes when he made a great point just now saying they'll probably hold it till the election. And like, oh, you want it? You want it? Elect us again and we'll do another 2 to 10%. So with Democrats, you always believe it when you see it. Fair and last words.
You know, while we're talking about things that they could do through the Department of Education with these loans, you know, if we're not going to get to the point where we have debt-free college, which is what should exist, 100%, that should be where we're at. But if we can't get to that just yet, then the Department of Education actually has the authority to just say, okay, you know what? We're going to cap interest rates on student loans at 0.5% forever. It'll never go more than that. You know what? We're going to cap payments. You never pay more than $100 a month. And then we have, you know, these programs where if you paid, you know, solidly for X amount of years, at that point it's forgiven. They can do all sorts of little maneuvering through the department itself to make this burden lessened for millions and millions of people. And those are things that they haven't even discussed. You know, so again, debt-free college, no student loans not even existing is what we should have. But if we can't get that, there's 100 other things the Department of Education could do that really haven't even been entered into these discussions, you know, for the most part. And so maybe that's what they'll dangle in front of us ahead of the 2024 election. But those are also other things that they need to be considering and that we need to be demanding that they do.
Let me throw out one question, because all of what we're talking about basically is executive orders, executive actions. I don't think, I understand why there's not a lot of conversation about what legislation could potentially be passed. I mean, the Republicans control the House. After the next cycle, they might well control the Senate too. Do we think that there is anything that he could propose that would get them to actually pass legislation to fix this? Like if it was based on like performance, like your grades, you get the loans, but you ace everything. Maybe we do some cancellation, or like a service-based repayment thing. Like rather than just 10 years of payments, you do 2 years of sort of like Tennessee Valley stuff, working on infrastructure, installing electric chargers, climate prepared. Like, is there literally anything that could be proposed that Republicans would, or do they just believe that we have so poisoned the well intentionally on what people think about higher education that we do not want to act as if anyone who goes to college is deserving of any compassion whatsoever?
So the answer to that question is that it's a bit of a trick question, because the question isn't the substance, it's the style, it's the way that you try to pass the bills. So the suggestions that both Farron and John had are brilliant. They're great, and I hadn't thought of some of those suggestions, and I think that they're absolutely terrific. If you proposed it and then you just had a vote and you walked away, then the Republicans have a 0% chance of voting for it, none whatsoever. They would never do anything for the American people. I was gonna say, unless there was a gun to their head. One, I don't want to do violent analogies too much, but two, even then they might not do it. Now, having said that, is there a way that you could pass it overall? I think yes. So wait, why? What's the disparity? Because you have to do the one thing that Democrats never do, which is actually fight. So like Biden proposes public option in one of the bills, it's at 84%. And then the Republicans, theoretically Republicans, but it was actually corporate Democrats too, all say no because their donors are Chamber of Commerce and they don't want paid family leave. So they say no, and then Biden goes, oh, okay. Well, of course you're not gonna pass anything doing that. If Lyndon Johnson had said, oh, Dixiecrats, you don't want the Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act? Oh, okay. Well, then we wouldn't have them. Instead, he broke like half a dozen, 2 dozen, I don't know, a great number of kneecaps. Metaphorically, but with him barely, okay? And until he broke the Dixiecrats in his own party and got the damn bills passed, which was awesome. But Biden and those guys, one, they're in on it. They're also just as corporate as the Democrats in the Senate and all of the Republicans. So the whole game is rigged to begin with. They're all frauds. The Democrats do just enough to have the media say historic so that they get re-election. They do always the bare minimum or nothing, right? But if Biden wanted to fight, what he would do is the Republican advantage of the House is minuscule. You would pick 4 or 5 or whatever the number you need is of vulnerable purple district Republicans, and you would do a massive marketing campaign and go, these guys don't care about students. After they cross the bridge, they want to burn it down so that none of your kids have the opportunity they had. You find out which schools they went to. You start saying, oh, this son of a bitch went to Harvard, but he doesn't want your kid to be able to have an opportunity. Settle down with all this debt and the albatross around your neck, and you fight and you fight. And these positions are actually very popular with American people until they bleed enough in the polls. Sorry for all the violent analogies. Okay, they're all metaphors. Until you bleed them out in the polls in a purple district, and they go, oh, yeah, I was always concerned about the students. I was going to do it anyway. That's standard hardball politics. The number of Democrats who play that is 0. And honestly, they're either all complicit, like the Biden-Pelosi camp, or they're not very smart or strong progressive camp. All right, go ahead, Farron.
I've got a plan where you could get enough Republicans on to pass it today. It's a bad plan, but here it is. You tell Republicans, for every 10 million people that you let us forgive student loans for every 10 million, we lower corporate and wealthy taxes by 1%. So you give us 50 million, we'll lower taxes by 5% for the same amount of years. So 50 million people get debt forgiven, 5% lower in taxes for the next 5 years. You go to 100 million, they get 10% for the next 10 years off their taxes. You get every Republican saying, all right, fine, we'll do that. The donors love it. Yeah, we're gonna suffer in the revenue department, but people are gonna have more money. So, that's the only way I think they could really get these Republicans to go on board, is if they somehow tie it to cutting taxes, because that's all these Republicans know how to do.
Yeah,
that's devastating, and I probably would not take that deal. It'll bankrupt the country. But Farron is absolutely right. They would then immediately pass it.
Okay, what about this? For every 10 million that have debt canceled, you can lock up one member of the extended Biden family. How about this? A cousin, a niece, whatever. It'll be great. Anyway, we gotta take our first break. When we come back, Joe Manchin back in the news, probably for something good. We'll see you in a few minutes.
All right, guys, we're back on TYT here. Boomer Dragon Cats is ready for the ever terrific power panel. Always bittersweet that I love Friday programming, but that means 2 days of no live shows. Well, that's sweet of you. Uriah Heap says John's hair put him in good company with Mr. Beast. Interesting comparison. I see it. In
exchange for that compliment, I'm going to be sending huge checks to 100,000 viewers.
That is not true, by the way. Not at all true.
They're in the mail.
Okay. Gabby, they are not. Gabby Marita writes in, Farron Cousins definitely makes us a power panel. Love seeing him on TYT. Should happen more. But I feel like John should be punished for not wearing a tie. I'll leave the exact format of such punishment up to Cenk or maybe Farron. She's very generous as usual. Okay, we appreciate that. And yes, Farron's awesome. Seth Michael Draginski writes in, talk about a power panel. Me, my husband, the original Young Turk, and Cenk's mother ran into them shopping on the West Side today. It's amazing. They are so proud of you and so nice. Aww. They asked my husband and I whether we had any children without batting an eye. With the pic I got with you at Go Fact Yourself, all I needed is to run into your wife and kids, and my Uyghur family bingo card will be complete. That's really funny, Seth. Good to hear from you, and it sounds like a lovely interaction. America Needs a Reboot says, hey, Mr. Jank, tomorrow morning I'm going to a Teamsters rally, and Sean O'Brien will be there. If I have a chance to speak to him, should I ask him if he'd be willing to give an interview on your show? No, don't worry, we can handle that. But you know what? Tell him Young Turks really appreciates what he's doing and his strength, okay? And tell him keep going. Gabby also wrote in, Joe Biden's the personification of the Bart Simpson quote, I can't promise I'll try, but I'll try to try. As usual, funny, Gabby, and true. Jayhawker41, the Bold Dragon, says, over 2 years of great news and some controversy. Keep it up. I hope at least the great news. We'll see about the controversy. Anyway, Cody the Epilepsy Dragon says, it's my birthday tomorrow. Can I get a happy birthday from John because of that gnarly hairdo?
You were going to get a happy birthday and then you kept writing words. Happy birthday.
Okay, he can't help himself. He's way too nice. Of course he's gonna give me a happy birthday. Okay. Alyssa Burdick in YouTube members says, Farron, John, and Cenk, what a power panel. I'm here for it. Well, literally, and thank you. Canadian Moose Rider writes in, 2 years subscribed, can't believe it's been that long. Keep rocking, doing a fantastic job, everyone at TYT. Miss Anonymous 617 wrote in, my school was closed and sued for predatory lending. I got no degree, but still have to pay. I hope I qualify because I can't afford this and bills. Man, my heart breaks for you. A lot of people are in that position and our system is brutal and ridiculous. All right, we'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, John Farron, and Tom Myers, who's a new member. Tom just hit the join button below the video to become a member and support good, honest news programming. We appreciate you, Tom. Tina Onken was a member for 30 months. Chris Birch gifted 2 Young Turks memberships, as is his want, and same with Canadian Moose Rider, AKA Maple Syrup Dragon, except they gifted 5. You guys are amazing. We appreciate you. Members make this show happen. All right, roll.
Okay, let's talk about some news. Joe Manchin is back and he's once again ruining Joe Biden's day. In this case, announcing that he plans to oppose Julie Su, which is Joe Biden's nominee to lead the Department of Labor. And because of the way that the votes break down, him being opposed to her is probably all it will take. That's probably it. She is currently the acting Labor Department secretary, previously having served as California's top labor official, overseeing workplace safety and policing wage theft in the country's most populous state. Now, why does he have a problem with her? Well, the thing about the wage theft might have already clued you into what his issue is, but labor unions and progressive groups both have enthusiastically backed her nomination, saying that she would aggressively enforce workplace protections, particularly for the most vulnerable low-wage workers. She's also a civil rights lawyer. Okay, so they say she is going to vigorously pursue abuses of workers. The issue that Joe Manchin has with her is that she would vigorously pursue abuses of workers, and that of course cannot happen. I mean, they're wording it differently. They're saying that she's anti-business, and that's it. He put out a statement saying, I believe the person leading the US Department of Labor should have the experience to collaboratively lead both labor and industry to forge compromises acceptable to both parties. While her credentials and qualifications are impressive, I don't care about that. I'm kidding. I have genuine concerns that Julie Su's more progressive background prevents her from doing this, and for that reason, I cannot support her nomination to serve as Secretary of Labor. And by the way, even if he wasn't against her, it is possible that she'd be blocked in the Senate anyway. Either John Tester or Kirsten Sinema, both of whom have not indicated that they'll support her. And in the case of Sinema, it seems like she wouldn't. That would also be enough to stop her from getting through. I do think it's funny the way that he worded it though, that I think the Secretary of Labor should be a both sideser, basically. You know, some labor stuff, but also industry stuff. Like, the head of the EPA isn't supposed to be spending half their time working for the oil companies. That's not how it works. The entire rest of the government is there to advance the interests of business. Can't we have one department, one secretary that spends the majority of their time thinking about issues affecting workers? Apparently not.
Yeah, so first of all, I'm a business owner. So do I think labor and business interests should be balanced? Yes. Are they balanced currently today in government? No, they are not. Who has the advantage? Business owners by about an order of 200 times more than labor. They have massive advantages, including having purchased almost all of the senators, including Joe Manchin. And by the way, I got news for you. If it wasn't Manchin and Sinema, it would be 2 other Democratic senators. They all get bribed, and almost all of them get bribed. I'm sorry, campaign contributions. And they get some from labor. So Sherrod Brown, who gets bribed by labor, would the most would be like, oh, we're gonna fight for labor, right? And then all the other ones like Coons and Carper and tons of other Menendez, et cetera, who all get bribed by corporations will come back and go, no way, corporations, right? So this is all a game of bribery. At least Manchin is like almost admitting it. He's like, I think the Secretary of Labor shouldn't work for labor. I think they should also work for corporate interests. Wow, okay, what a twist in Washington. Okay, so the whole thing's totally corrupt. Now, what's the correct standard? I argued for it in my book, Justice is Coming, democratic capitalism. And so what I mean by that is, look, we should have capitalism. I believe in that, and I think a lot of people get mad at me for saying that. We could get it, that's a different conversation. But democracy, i.e. your representatives, your government, is supposed to check capitalism. They're not working for, like in the, what was supposed to happen in the Constitution and the American form of government and democracy is that your representatives are supposed to represent you and only you. So now that doesn't mean you obliterate business. I don't want you to do that. You want to have enough balance so that businesses can exist and that their employees can thrive. But you shouldn't be doing it on behalf of business. Remember, businesses are not humans. They're just legal fictions we created. If you say, hey, listen, I want to do it on behalf of the workers of that company and the overall community and the overall economy, okay, that makes sense. But guys, none of that is happening in Washington, none of it. Capitalism is not 1% checked by this incredibly crooked Senate and all of the government. So, okay, but there is one piece of good news here. She's the acting labor secretary. She's been previously confirmed by the Senate for another role. So they could keep her to the end of Biden's term and nobody's gonna do anything about it. And it looks like they're headed in that direction. I hope they don't bother trying to get another labor secretary. She seems like a very rare person in Congress that's actually doing something for you, or in government that's doing something for you. That's why Manchin hates her. So, President Biden, this is a super easy fix. Donald Trump had nothing but acting secretaries and nobody did anything about it. Just keep her in that position forever. And Joe Manchin's thinking of running against you. You already gave him the Mountain Valley Pipeline. What the hell else does he need? Tell him to go take a long walk off a short coal mine. Okay.
John took the words right out of my mouth with, picking apart the words that Manchin used. And I do think it's important because we're talking about a pick for labor secretary. This is not somebody who's gonna come out and immediately say, okay, guess what? We got a 4-day work week now. I'm decreeing it, 4-day work week, 6-hour days. Everybody gets mandatory paid overtime. That's not what they're gonna do. The secretary is basically there to say, listen, you can't take advantage of these people. You can't steal their wages. You can't not enact safety protocols that are gonna leave a factory worker, missing a hand or missing an arm. And when you do those things, we're going to investigate you and hold you liable. That is what the Secretary of Labor's job is supposed to be. So no, you should not have this camaraderie with corporations where you're rubbing elbows with them, and hobnobbing with these CEOs at these swanky dinners. Your position is to protect the people. And almost by definition of that, the corporations, the CEOs themselves, it's adversarial. And maybe it shouldn't be that way, but it has to be that way because we don't have anything functioning like that now. I mean, we're looking across the country, pardon me, as Republicans just dismantle labor laws at the state level. We've already had one teenager die working in an area where they should not have been working, but Republicans said, hey, let's put the kids back to work. Let's put them in the slaughterhouses. Let's put them in the meat lockers. They'll do fine. Nope, they're not. Yeah. That's why we have this department to begin with, because the corporations can't be trusted. They've proven that for decades and decades, if not well over 100 years in this country. They have proven they're not going to do the right thing when we leave them to their own devices. And that's what this position was created to stop.
Yeah, just to double down on what both of you guys are saying, the labor secretary is supposed to fight for labor, and you get to balance between labor and business. Number one, because the rest of the government's all for business. So if she's super strong, you'd be lucky to get to 10% balance, right? And then thirdly, the businesses fight for themselves. The government isn't supposed to be fighting on behalf of corporations. Like I said earlier, they're supposed to be fighting on behalf of voters, communities, and maybe their workers. But that's how you get to balance, when the companies go, I want this, and your government fights back, and then they get to a balance. Instead, the government has joined them, and they're saying the labor secretary should also join them, so there should be no balance at all. That's what Manchin's actually saying.
100%. By the way, I agree that we can't expect that like the labor department or the labor secretary would come out and be like, boom, 4-day work week. But wouldn't it be nice to have one person in elected office say that we should be working towards that? Like that should be a goal? I feel like some people would support that. I feel like that might be popular. No. Now really fast, if I were to tell you that we found out, exclusive reporting probably from ProPublica, that a business PAC had taken $5,000 in 20s and put it in a sack and scrawled a $ sign on it, and then they gave it to Manchin and it was caught on like CCTV, that would be a scandal, okay? That would be a game changer. You know what wouldn't be a game changer? Revealing that over the last 5 years of reporting, business PACs have given him $2.8 million. Just because they like him doesn't have any effect or whatever. It doesn't change his opinion or anything.
Look, he's balanced. He's got labor at 267,000.
It's totally balanced. I'm bad with numbers, but also, so this is obviously not good news. This is, Joe Biden has had so many lunches with Joe Manchin, and you don't do this to your lunch buddy. And also, as you point out, he's probably going to be running against him for the presidency. So I was happy to see that Biden is reacting strongly worded letter. He says the president's support for acting Secretary Sue is unwavering, and we hope Senator Manchin and Senator Sinema reconsider their position.
Oh, that'll probably do the job. You hope they reconsider.
Breaking news, Manchin has folded, Sue has been appointed.
The hope worked, He's like, well, I am getting bribed millions of dollars by corporations. On the other hand, he hoped that I reconsider. So that seems very strong by Biden.
He should have wished upon a star. He missed a great opportunity there.
Yeah.
Oh well, okay, let's talk about something else. I don't know why coming out of this last story anyone would be worried about democracy, but turns out some are. New polling indicates once again that Americans are not feeling particularly confident about the state of our democracy, although not always for the same reasons. We're gonna dive into some of these numbers. First of all, only about 1 in 10 adults polled in the US give high ratings to the way democracy is working in the United States or how well it represents the interests of most Americans. I'm gonna guess that 1 in 10 is the top 10% of America, if I had to guess. But anyway, 53% say that Congress is doing a bad job of upholding democratic values. Only 16% say it's doing a good job. Those are the 16% that I think are paying the least attention. But anyway, only about half the country, 49% say that democracy is not working well, compared with 40% who say it's working somewhat well. Now that's all interesting. We've sort of talked about that stuff before, but this is the fact that I find most fascinating. About half also say each of the political parties is doing a bad job of upholding democracy. 47% who say that about Democrats, and even more, 56% about Republicans. So they roughly feel like the same between the two, which if the people responding to this are savvy, I understand what they mean. Like, you should be frustrated with the Democrats. They came in saying their first priority would be a big voting rights bill and they would do all of that, and they didn't do that. But at least like the broad strokes that generally is what CNN and MSNBC would say, it does seem like the perception should be a little bit different. I mean, I don't think that both parties initiated coups in the last couple of years. I think it was just the one. But that said, I don't pay attention to the news on weekends. So if they did it on a Saturday, I might have missed it. What do you think?
Yeah, so look, I'm torn in the same way that John is. On the one hand, of course Republicans are worse, not even close. They literally did a coup with fake electors. I'm not even talking about the riot on January 6th. I'm talking about they had a plan where they were gonna have fake electors, which they write in the emails. They use that phrase. And they were gonna have them vote for the guy who didn't win, and they were gonna overthrow our democracy. That's a pretty good sign that you're not in favor of democracy. Okay, so all right, so that's point one. But guys, I don't think that's the main issue here. Yes, that's a giant issue, especially with Trump still running and still has a decent chance of winning. Don't lose focus on that, that is massively important. But just as important is why that anger on the right exists in the first place, which is that our politics is nearly completely corrupt. And so I give the right wing credit for this all the time. I think they figured that out way before Democrats did. And that's because Democrats listen to mainstream media more. And mainstream media is the #1 problem. And they never get it, they don't understand it, they don't believe it. There's poll after polls that says 14% of people trust mainstream media, 7%, 9%. And they all look at it and go, oh no, they love us, we're the fourth estate. No, they don't. They think you're a bunch of liars, and they are correct. So when you all say, like we just did a story on Joe Manchin, and in the last 5 years, he's taken like nearly $3 million from corporate PACs, right? But if you go back further, and he's taken like $2.5 million just from the bankers, like 1.25 million from the oil and gas industry. It's just bribe after bribe after bribe. And then the media gets upset at me when I call them bribes. They say, no, ExxonMobil, it just cares about the general welfare. And they were being charitable. They just happened to give it to all these politicians, and the politicians happen to vote with them, but we're never ever going to mention it in any article about votes. When the politicians actually vote, we will never tell you who their donors are and why they voted that way, which is 100% of the reason they vote the way that they do. We show it on the show all the time. We show you, here's their campaign donations they got from corporations, and here's how they voted with them. And it matches up pretty much 100%. So democracy's gone. Look, this is a giant topic in my book, Justice is Coming. You can get it at tyt.com/justice, where I show you definitively how corporations took over the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said bribery is now free speech, and corporations can give unlimited money to bribe our politicians. In fact, some of the justices in dissent back in the 1970s when they did this were like, no, this is a mortal danger to our democracy. And nobody listened to them. And democracy died all the way back in 1978. There's meta studies, Princeton and Northwestern did one. All this is in the book, where they showed the top 10%, to John's point, that 1 in 10 that thinks we have a democracy. He's not wrong, they're almost all in the top 10%. Because the top 10% is super happy. They've got their status quo, they love it, and they enforce it. And it turns out, hey, good news, top 10% don't always get what they want. They only get what they want 45% of the time. Now, do you wanna know how much the bottom 90% gets their way? So like, meaning the bottom 90% all think this policy position. Do they get that passed into legislation? According to a meta study of over 20 years of legislation, their effect is literally 0. You have no effect on your government, none. And every study confirms it. So when people in power see this, and I know a lot of folks in the establishment, they'll go, this is so sad. Fox News has corrupted people into thinking that we don't have a democracy. Okay, so when we have a great democracy, we have to uphold the system exactly as it is, okay? No, you're not missing it. You're the corrupt ones. And all that corruption and all of those bribes get funneled right into mainstream media in the form of political ads. So the media and the politicians have agreed, we're going to do massive corruption, we're going to kill democracy, and then we're gonna lie about it and gaslight you. But you know what? Good news, it didn't work. The American people are like, no, we don't think we have a democracy. We think you guys are all full of crap. Guess what, Americans? You're totally right. The facts back you up. Farron.
The problem is, yes, they're right. Everything you've said is correct, obviously, but you have these polls, and we see them happen all the time. Majority, everybody says everything's terrible. Democracy doesn't work. I hate Congress. They've got like a 5% approval rating, whatever it is. I hate them. I hate it. We need people that work for us. Then they turn around every 2 dang years, go back to the voting booth and say, oh, person's been in office 20 years. There you go. Welcome back. Because they don't think it's their person. Nobody, no district in this country wants to look at that and be like, well, everybody's bad, but I think the person I've sent to Congress for 20 straight years, they're the only one doing a good job. And when you have every district out there, or 80 to 90% of them, sending back the same person every 2 years, yeah, nothing's gonna change because you keep sending the same people there. Mitch McConnell has been in that Senate seat since I was 2 years old, and I turned 40 this year. And so it drives me insane that people see that there's a problem. They recognize that these people we have in DC are not working for them. They know that they're not getting anything out of legislation. Most of them couldn't tell you the last bill that was passed that directly affected their lives, but they go back to the polls every 2 years, every 4 years, and they vote for the same people every time, and they don't change a thing. They don't vote in the primaries, so they don't have that voice. They just say, yep, let's send them back 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, but I'll keep complaining about it and then doing the same thing because it's not my person that's bad. It's the other 99, 99 senators out there that are terrible. Mine is totally good. It's maddening that everybody hates it, but nobody wants to say, you know what? Maybe we ought to try something different once in a while.
That sounds appealing, but I think that Dianne Feinstein's killing it.
Yeah.
I think that we should stick with her for a little bit.
Okay.
Anyway.
I do want to say one thing about what Farron said. He makes a great point. Look, the mainstream media kind of tell you that you should vote for the incumbents. They don't directly say it. They say it in the way that they cover stories. They go, incumbent is leading in the race. She has all of the money and she has all of the endorsements. And some outsider radicals have decided to run against her. But you know what? They're on paragraph 28. You're never even going to get to them. We're just going to tell you how esteemed this wonderful, honorable politician is. We're not going to say it exactly like that, but we're going to frame it so it looks like we're objective, but meanwhile we're doing the same exact thing. Vote incumbent, keep the status quo. Every mainstream media reporter does. They don't even realize they're doing it, but that's ingrained in every story. Anyway, so what is your option? Look, some people say, hey, listen, brother, I don't have time to figure out every goddamn district and this and that and all these different elections. All right, I'll give you an easy rule of thumb. So always vote in primaries. Primaries are in a lot of ways more important than general elections because primaries are where you can stop corruption. Because if you're a Republican, you're probably not going to vote for a Democrat in the general election. And if you're a Democrat, you're probably not going to vote for a Republican in the general election. But you could vote for new candidates in primaries within your party. So you're not betraying your ideology. Go vote. I know like maybe 10% of Congress is not awful, maybe. So your default should be, if I don't know, vote against the incumbent. When you see a name you recognize as an incumbent, vote against them. And you know what? But it's all based on, is there a democracy or isn't there? If there's a bill that passed and you loved it, then vote for the incumbent. But if it turns out they do nothing after nothing after nothing, which is what they always do, other than give giant giveaways to corporations, then go vote against all the incumbents because they collectively didn't do a goddamn thing. That's how democracy is supposed to work. Don't let mainstream media brainwash you. They are trying to get you to vote for the corporate interest, and so don't listen to them. Make sure that you're actually paying attention and take charge of your own democracy.
Love it. Time for our second break. We'll be back with more.
All right. Back on the social break here. Let's go to Christina Elisa Brown in Super Chat. Send John and his family love, peace, blessings. Congrats again. Happy Friday, TYT family. Hello, General and Farron. And TYT gives hope and inspiration. Christina, thank you for saying that.
Thank you. Very nice of you.
Indeed. So we're all thrilled about John and his family. So thanks for writing that in. Dr. Matt wrote in a critical comment. I love Cenk, but you still don't get it. There's no such thing as democratic, compassionate, or accountable capitalism. Capitalism is capitalism, full stop. Dr. Matt, love you too, brother. We disagree on that, that's okay. We've got years and years to talk over all the nuances of those issues. By the way, you know what was an interesting show we had on the network? I don't know if we still have it in the member section, but Agitprop, when me and Hassan would debate capitalism versus Marxism, etc. It was really interesting conversations. Honestly, I don't know if we still have that in the archives, but if we do, check that out, and that's a good reason to join. tyt.com/join. By the way, if you didn't see this week's old school episode with Brian Unger, that's another excellent reason to be a member.
I didn't see that yet.
Oh, you didn't see it?
No, I love Brian Unger. He needs to be on more often.
Wait till you see the Brian Unger episode. There isn't anybody that watched it that didn't go. In fact, Jesus sent me that emoji just last night. I mean, yesterday morning. All right, Jason Ray writes in, Manchin's in serious need of some skeletons dancing out of his closet. His smugness is sitting on his pile of money is sickening. Well, Jason, the reason they don't do that is because there's no real reporters in the country. So he has thousands of skeletons in his closet, including his own coal company, etc. We covered it at tyt.com, and then the rest of the press barely touched it. Independent outlets like The Lever, etc. do. The New York Times mentioned once that he takes campaign contributions, and that was because Biden was mad at him. They're like, ooh, corporate Democrat versus corporate Democrat. What do we do? It was like one of those Spider-Man memes, right? So that's the only reason they mentioned it, because they got permission from another corporate goon. Jason also wrote in, Cenk, see you fail to remember corporations are people now. So Dems are working for their constituents. The corporation people are their constituents. Well, of course they are, and that's, obviously he's being sarcastic, but if you ask the corporate Democrat, they'd probably tell, Gottheimer would probably be like, oh yeah, of course. Corporations are some of my best friends. Which there's some truth to. Warren McNeil wrote in, Farron for president. He's smart, he's progressive, he's good looking, he's perfect.
Perfect.
Wow.
All right, I'm in 100%. Let's do it. That was the best comment I've ever gotten, and I will honor it, and let's do it. Let's go for it.
Farron, be careful what you say. I have been looking for a progressive to run for president for like a year straight now, so. And nobody else will take it, so call me. Anyways, Independent Conversations show says, I was one of the lucky ones to get my full student relief, but when I tried to get others on the same program, my friends and families got denied because of outrageous technical issues. Yeah, that sounds like that's our government. Okay, also check out our podcasting network. We'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, John, and Farron with you guys. Make sure you're checking out Ring of Fire, that's Farron's show, and Damage Report, that's John's show. Wonderful programs. Also with us is Teresa Aarons and Simon Margolis, because they just became Young Turks members. And Young Turks members do this show with us. That's part of why we read your comments, and you help us keep this going, especially Simon, who signed up at a little bit higher level. When you sign up at the higher levels, it helps us keep the membership at $4.99 for everyone. So there's lots of folks who could, that's the max they could do, and we want to make sure they still get it. We never raised our prices during inflation, so everyone who signs up at a higher level or upgrades, and you could do it from the join button too. We really appreciate you guys, and we appreciate that you could expand our community by doing that. All right, John.
Okay, let's have a little bit of fun to close out this hour. For most people signing into Twitter these days, the best thing that you can hope for, I guess, is a little bit of anger, worst case scenarios, depression, a complete loss of faith in humanity. But that's not true for everyone. Some people logging into Twitter this week are finding a nice little boost. Specifically, right-wing posters that Elon Musk is obsessed with are finding checks. They're being given by the richest man in the world thousands of dollars for posting on the website that he owns. The first beneficiaries of what is being pitched as a new ad revenue sharing plan are high-profile far-right influencers who tweet. They've been tweeting what they've earned. Ian Miles Chong, Benny Johnson, Ashley St. Clair, all talking about their earnings. An account called End Wokeness said that they made $10,419 for, I don't know, a day of content, a week of content, a month of content. Nobody actually knows how this works because it is as arbitrary as it seems. And it, by the way, has nothing to do with threads coming out. It has nothing to do with people leaving the service, nothing to do with him being worried that the people that he is a reply guy to on a daily basis might ever abandon him. Now, it's not just the accounts that we've mentioned. Andrew Tate apparently has made $20,000. A nice boost for him as he faces the human trafficking and rape charges that he's currently facing. An account called DC Drano made $7,000 after he acknowledges previously being banned prior to Elon Musk taking over for spreading election denial lies. Now, not in response to this guy, but in response to a different one, another person I've never heard of before. Elon Musk says, "You're welcome." This is not in response to competitors. I announced we would do this in February. Sorry it took so long to roll out. It is only right that content creators are rewarded for their contributions. Now that is not 100% wrong. He has for a few months been saying that they're going to do some sort of revenue thing, where if they do ads on your posts or in the replies, you can make some money. So there is an element of truth there. The idea that this has nothing to do with the fact that over 100 million people signed up for threads in the first week though is utterly absurd. There has thus far been no indication of any sign-up process for this. I haven't seen anyone who is not a far-right grifter who has earned thousands of dollars for this. It appears to be, and until I see evidence, I'm going to assume that it is what it seems to be. He has chosen the accounts that he likes and he has decided, I'm just gonna throw thousands of dollars at them as a treat and they'll probably love him even more. I mean, wouldn't you?
Yeah, so first of all, John's right, they're almost all right-wingers. So, I am objectively helping creators. First of all, if you did it based on impact, you probably wouldn't get any political people. You might get sports people, etc. No, it's super obvious. You're picking all the guys who were like retweeted you. It's hilarious, okay? I think I saw one set, like the Krasenstein brothers or something.
Who are massive Elon Musk supporters now.
Oh,
if
yeah,
you don't know that.
Oh, really, huh?
They still technically like the Democrats or whatever, but they love Elon Musk.
Yeah, guys, he's literally paying people to like him. Literally.
He's buying friends.
Okay, so now, to give you a sense of how unsustainable this is and what a terrible business idea it is, there's two things I have to tell you. Number one, I know the numbers, right? I run a digital media company, so I know exactly how this type of stuff works. Paying $10,000 and $20,000 for a bunch of tweets, that's totally unsustainable. Like if he did that as a real business practice and he paid everybody on Twitter proportionally what he paid those guys, the $44 billion would be nothing compared to what he'd have to pay the creators, right? Like there's no way in the world you could afford that. It would sink the company immediately, overnight, right? So these payments are totally out of proportion to the value that those guys created, which then just kind of, again, comes back to he's paying people to like him. It's one of the most pathetic things I've ever seen. And if you're a business person, you don't know that a bunch of tweets, no matter how many impressions they got, are almost never going to be worth $10,000. Let alone per month, let alone $20,000 to the rapist dude. Sorry, alleged rapist, okay? So now the last part of it is, so now that you've done this, and again, I run a business, so I've seen this happen, and you gave it to some people, but not others. Nah. Here's what's gonna happen next, and it's already begun to happen. I saw it today. first thing is all the people on the left go, wait, where's our money? What the hell? Oh, you're so bad. And then people in the mainstream media, they don't say it, but they're like, because they see that their tweets get more impressions than the rando Romanian rapist, right? And the Drano dude or whatever, and they're like, but the mainstream media won't say that. They'll just write super crappy articles about you. Okay, so that's coming down the pike. But that's not, all those two factors are not the most damaging. The most damaging is other right-wingers who didn't get paid. And now, and I've seen it in the beginning of it, they're gonna rip his face off. They're gonna be like, where's my money? You know, why did Drano get it, but I'm Clorox, and I didn't get it. I hate trans people even more than they do. Where's my money? And then he's gonna be like, oh, he's gonna panic, and he's gonna give a little bit there and a little bit there. And then the next thing that's gonna happen is people are gonna say, wait a minute, that guy got more than me. I want just as much as him, until everyone wants $20,000 a month. And then they're gonna withdraw the program. Then the guys he gave the money to, they're gonna be mad that they're not getting the money anymore. So good news for people who don't like Elon Musk or Twitter, pandemonium is about to break out there.
You know, I was actually gonna say that exact same thing. He now has set the precedent where the first little weirdos that he's paid, he's gonna have to keep paying them that, or they will turn against him and start whining and complaining. And that was brilliant about everybody else getting mad too. But I've been saying for years, and I've been saying it on Twitter, which I'm barely doing anything on Twitter anymore just because it's not fun anymore. But this is a big reason why people need to stop signal boosting some of these weirdos all over Twitter. There are so many people who I know who they are, and I shouldn't know who they are, but I only know who they are because people on the left want to start fights with them or they want to rebut them. Let it go. You're not changing people's minds. You might get in a fun zinger every now and then, but stop it. Especially now, because now you're giving these people maybe thousands of dollars, so don't do it anymore. If you withdraw, if you bite your tongue every now and then, and by God, I do it every time I log into that app, let them go.
Yeah.
Just let them bark in the dark, and then it won't be an issue anymore. So many people need to learn that lesson. But the second thing is that there's no accountability with any of this. You know, with YouTube, with Facebook, all of these other websites where you post to and you get paid for it, there's algorithms. You can log into your back end. You see your RPM, your CPM, your impression rate, your click-through rate. You know who is doing what to your stuff, and it's all accountable. You can add it all up, and it's right there. With this is Elon Musk just saying, you know what, Andrew Tate, again, who I wouldn't know if people on the left hadn't retweeted him, 20 grand, here you go, 20 grand. He's making it up as he goes. And like Cenk said, it's not sustainable. You are setting yourself up for the ultimate failure. And it's going to be the funniest thing in the world when this blows up in your face. And I don't think more than a month down the road before we see that massive explosion of this blowing up in his face.
Maybe. By the way, if you thought that there would be something that Elon Musk could do to make this even more ridiculous, bear in mind, of course, he is an innovator, he's a genius, he will come up with a way. So this is only for verified people, obviously. Verified, they're not verified, but they do pay $8 to Elon Musk. This is like basically like multi-level marketing right now. In particular, only verified people contribute to this. He also, by the way, it's ads in your replies that verified people are seeing, but one of the big advertised benefits of being verified is that you see less ads. So that's a weird combination right there. Also, he's like, by the way, I don't know if you've looked at his replies today in the last couple of days. He is nonstop tweeting about Threads. So again, the idea that this is not about Threads, he cannot stop tweeting about it. He said, he replied to someone who was like, well, you know, if leftists or Democrats want the money, they just need to make accounts and do verified. So first of all, are we supposed to pretend that this is just like the invisible hand of the market? You changed the algorithm to boost right-wing accounts, and now you're paying them for being right-wing accounts that you boosted already. Utterly absurd. And I will also point out, We have made the case to people for quite a while that right-wingers exist, and many people become right-wingers to get paid by millionaires and billionaires. And that was always at least mildly abstract. We're done with that now. It is literally just the richest right-winger in the country, in the world, writing checks to right-wing grifters to sustain them. And it's definitely gonna make some people want to do that so that they can get the checks. It's now totally out in the open. They're bragging about it. The entire infrastructure, the entire right-wing economy that they've created.
Yeah, so what's funny is that all these right-wing sites popped up, Parler, Grifter, whatever they are, right? True Social, obviously,
Rumble.
and Rumble, and none of them worked because it was just conservatives like ragging on people, but there was nobody else. Now, ironically, Musk is turning Twitter into True Social or Getter, the ones that didn't work. He spent $44 billion to turn it into a way crappier site or app that we know definitively is a bad business model. Like, the more he keeps going, the more it becomes stunning what a terrible businessman he is. Like, it's just, I've never seen anything like it. But, and look, Farron, you're brilliant, and like even just in this 1 hour and all the topics that we've discussed, you have a lot of great ideas, and you're totally right that he's making it up. I thought it was hilarious that he's like, we have a proprietary algorithm that has told us how much we should pay them. No, you don't. I know those numbers. Those numbers are not from a proprietary algorithm. You just picked them out of a hat. But having said all that, Farron, you've never been more wrong than your suggestion of just let it go. Like, people on Twitter are gonna let it go, okay? Nobody's gonna let it go on Twitter. Okay, by the way, I'm not even gonna let it go on Twitter. But Farron, these days, all there are the clout wars. And everybody wants clout, and the way you get clout is you attack someone that has more followers than you have. Okay, that's the thing I just discovered.
No, I disagree. I always try to avoid that drama, and it has worked for me with very minimal growth over a very long period of time. By the way, follow me on Threads.
Well, and by the way, John, I don't have a Threads account yet, I don't think. So John, as soon as I get on there, since you will have more followers than me, I'm gonna attack you.
I can't wait, and I'm gonna ignore it based on what Farron said.
See, there you go. And then I'm gonna keep on attacking you until I have more followers. Welcome to the clout wars. Okay, speaking of which, we're crazy out of time.
Yeah, we are.
You gotta go check out these guys because they're actually good guys. They have great programming, really smart. And you know what? Farron didn't like that I criticized
We were
him.
fighting.
Yeah,
he didn't like it. He doesn't want to respond to the fighting.
You know what he did? He did the same thing that he told us to, just log off.
He ignored it, yeah. He's touching grass right now.
Seriously, check out Ring of Fire, Farron Cousins, great show, and check out Damage Report. We'll be right back.
Welcome to the Damage Report. I'm John Idarola. This is gonna be a big one.
Meanwhile, in the Arctic, you know where this is going. You watch the Damage Report, the Arctic's on fire. Obviously, why would we be talking about the Arctic except to tell you that it's melting once again? The Republicans aren't that interested in it. I wonder why. Lift out of poverty up to 3.7 million people, including an estimated 1.3 million children. Hashtag save the children? Not if it costs money. I mean, come on.
At TYT, our mission is to boldly pursue truth, challenge the establishment, and drive positive change. At a time when corporate capture of our media, our government, and our politics is nearly absolute, everyday working people need a champion to fight for them and to push back against the powerful interests that threaten our democracy itself. At TYT, we're proudly progressive and call out corruption and duplicity wherever we see it, from Republicans, Democrats, or anyone else. And unlike mainstream news media outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, to defense contractors, to Wall Street, or to big pharma. We only have to answer to our audience, and for nearly 2 decades, we've accomplished that by delivering honest, timely,
and insightful perspectives on the day's news without fear or favor or concern for whose toes we might step on or which powerful elites we might offend. And while we're super serious about the news, we also manage to do it in a way that is fun and lighthearted. We can do this together and serve our audience, and yes, have fun doing it.
Indisputable is still the fastest growing news show in America compared to CNN, Fox News, and 30 other networks. We tell the truth on Indisputable because the truth is indisputable. We go places that other news media outlets refuse to go. When there were human rights abuses happening at the Victorville prison, guards and members of the community contacted us.
You, through your investigative reporting, unearthed very troubling allegations about specific forms of abuse and discrimination in the federal prison system.
It really doesn't take much to be a trusted voice. All it takes is to be fearless, report on matters, be an advocate. I called it the bullpen intentionally because it's a place of preparation. We present individuals who may have an opposing view, so we debate. Sometimes we interview individuals because their stories deserve to be heard. A survivor of significant police misconduct and his attorney. We covered this story earlier, and to remind you of the horror of one man being shot at damn near 100 times by the police. We take time on this show to showcase the temper tantrums of Karens in the wild. We do this not because we want to see people's emotional outbursts in public, but because these incidents are emblematic of a bigger societal issue taking place across the nation, and it has to be checked.
My friend, my big homie, attorney at law, Benjamin Crump.
I just want to thank you, man. When educated, articulate brothers like yourself speak truth to power, it makes a great difference in changing the landscape in America.
Listen, no matter what you do, don't allow the politics of ideology to evaporate the soul that still exists inside of you. They don't stop, I don't stop. Racism won't stop, I won't stop. Systemic bias won't stop, I won't stop. People still need health care, so I won't stop. People still need criminal justice systems reform, so I won't stop. You won't stop either.
Drop it. All right, power panel. Cenk Uygur, Francesca Fiorentini, who is the host of the Bituation Room in our podcasting network, which you should definitely check out. It's a fantastic podcast. And J.R. Jackson, the host of Watch List, which you should check out on Watch List YouTube and Facebook channels. And we've got, look at all these lovely people. Gabby Mathis and Ella Goff have both upgraded their membership. We love and appreciate that. And Weed Eater 72 just joined us. And by the way, Left in Oz asked how to upgrade. No, you can upgrade through the join button, brother. So thank you for asking, and thank you for all the folks upgrading to support others at $4.99 level. We appreciate you all. All right, Francesca's got the news.
All right, well, we all know that when it comes to defense spending, there's little daylight between Republicans and Democrats, and usually whatever is asked for is given, and then some. Not this time around when it comes to the National Defense Authorization Act, which came up for a vote this week and was much more contentious than usual, thanks to a slew of anti-gay, anti-trans arguably racist additions that the GOP added in as amendments that actually, in fact, did pass, and this time along partisan lines, narrowly passing. Only 2019 to 2010, only 4 Democrats opposed, all but 4 Democrats opposed the bill. Excuse me, so everyone was against, except for 4 Democrats. And it authorizes that national defense budget of $886 billion for fiscal year 2024. But what gives? Like, what happened? Why were so many Democrats, which again, usually are authorizing defense spending just like Republicans are, why did they actually, vote no? Let's take a look at some of these amendments that made it into this House National Defense Authorization Act. Ending travel reimbursement for troops seeking abortions, ending coverage of transition surgeries and gender affirming care for troops, gutting diversity and inclusion programs, limiting the type of flag that can be flown at military installations, and then, and this one is a Boebert special, blocking military schools from purchasing or having pornographic and radical gender ideology books, because we've all seen those books on the battlefield. I mean, they're seriously just littered there. But to give you a sense before we dive into those particular amendments and everything that happened, to give you a sense of how contentious this vote was and how weird that is, here's just a little nugget from our friend Marjorie Greene.
I again remind Congress that Ukraine is not the 51st state of America. This is not a NATO ally. And this is our National Defense Authorization Act for our nation, for the United States of America, which 50 states. If our Department of Defense wants to defend America, we should be defending our border and not proclaiming our righteousness, talking about a war in Ukraine. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield.
Gentlewoman's time has expired. For the gentlewoman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request an Advil and yield 1 minute to Representative Joe Wilson from South Carolina.
I request an Advil after listening to Marjorie Greene go off about Ukraine and all the money that's being spent on this war. Guess who eventually voted for the bill? Marjorie Greene. She absolutely fell in line and she voted for it. But it got, that's like silly and funny. I need an Advil after listening to Marjorie Greene, but just to give you a sense of where these amendments are coming from, it's truly the culture war, actually gunning for what the Republicans believe is a so-called woke military. And here it is exemplified perfectly in this clip.
We have drag shows taking place at Malmstrom Air Force Base. There are 150 ICBM missiles that are being controlled by that Air Force Base and by these individuals. I don't want someone who doesn't know if they are a man or a woman with their hand on a missile button.
Yeah, so that's Representative Rosendale, obviously engaging in some light transphobia there. And again, that amendment around denying troops any kind of gender affirming care was actually passed in this bill. But before I kick it to you guys, I just wanted to show you sort of, people are standing up. One of the Democrats, of nearly all of them who opposed the bill, was Pat Ryan, who is a former combat veteran himself. And he had this to say about what his colleagues added to this.
I am a proud combat veteran. This is an insult to all who serve, particularly women in uniform. Nearly 20% of our active duty force risking their life right now.
Absolutely, risking their life. And actually 41% of the US military does identify as some sort of minority group, whether women or a person of color. There's a lot more, and we'll get to it very soon, but you guys, it's very interesting to know that only recently Justice John Roberts, as they were striking down affirmative action, said that, but in the military, it should be okay. And now you have the GOP saying like, no, it's not okay in the military. We should absolutely not even try and recruit people of color. But more than that, once they are there, we should make sure they don't feel welcome, that there's not any attempt at trying to have an anti-racist framework for the 41% of people, troops who identify as minorities.
Yeah, so look, there's tons of terrible things in this bill, including the bill itself. But let's take it one at a time. First, about that hateful Republican congressperson. Francesca's being sarcastic by saying light transphobia. It was massive transphobia. And look, these days we're not on great terms, but someone who was a contributor here is Benny Carollo, and she was a drone operator, so she had her finger on the button. And I got to tell you, I would much prefer to be her than anyone like that congressperson. You know why? Because she had a conscience and she was worried about what they were doing. That's a person who cares, and that's a person I would much rather have responsible for those kind of actions than some clown bozo who doesn't care, who's at the receiving end of those drone strikes. So it's hateful what he said. It's disgusting, and unfortunately, the entire Republican Party is going along with it now. So, and every part of these new amendments that they insisted on putting in the defense bill is ridiculous. Against diversity and inclusion. You heard what Franny just told you. 45% of the troops are minorities, and they're struggling to get new people to sign up. You think it's a good idea to be against diversity in the military? What do you want? You just want white right-wingers in the military and that's it? You're nuts. We're not gonna have anywhere near enough people in the military for your racist positions to work. It's not workable just if we want to keep the country safe, let alone anything else. Now to the heart of the bill's a monstrosity. It's not a defense bill, it's a pork bill. Every part of it is stuffed with pork. The waste in this bill is extraordinary, hundreds of billions of dollars. Later, the Pentagon will say, and it's a guarantee because they say it after every one of these bill passes. Before they passes, they go, we need every cent. After when we go to audit them, they go, oh yeah, half of it, we don't know where it went. Went to the defense contractors, I guess you'll never know where it went. They never pass an audit, they're all crooks. And now the final irony here is there is one thing Marjorie Taylor Greene that said and promoted in this debate that I agreed with. She did not want to vote for the cluster bombs for Ukraine. Now, I don't agree with her on NATO. I don't agree with her on Ukraine. I think we should support Ukraine. But those cluster bombs are very dangerous, and human rights groups are against the cluster bombs going into any combat. And so there we have ironic agreement, and I'll take agreement in whatever form you get it. All right.
Yeah, whatever happened to a lack of emotion? People get too emotional. Women get emotional. Women get emotional over these types of things. Representative Rosendale talking about how he doesn't want anyone that's whatever he called folks that he doesn't like because he's afraid to have their finger on the button. You look pretty worried there. You're scared, you're shaky. Those are the type of people who don't want their finger on the button. But look, it still comes from the same point of view. His perspective, someone who doesn't know whether they're a man or a woman. You don't know other people, whether or not they're man or woman, whether or not they're trans, whoever they are. But the thing is you have to have that judgment. This is the basis for all kinds of white supremacy, bigotry, and any kind of discrimination that comes forward is based off of that one person's perspective. If it's not seen from their perspective, something is weird about it. That's superiority, that's hierarchical. That's me being better than someone else. This is what I believe, therefore everything you believe is nonsense. And we should base our structure, our military, our recruitment, everything based off of me. That's excluding a significant portion of the population, actually the majority. Now, just because white folks or white Christian cis male folks have always had this kind of power, that's where they want to keep it. Anything else is odd and weird to him. And if it's not his, it's wrong. Where does equality come from? And again, it feeds right into the same argument. That's the point of diversity. If you don't know anybody that's from other kind of backgrounds, if you don't know anyone that's ever lived a different life than you, if you've never been a woman, if you've never been trans, if you've never been gay, if you've never been any of these types of things, if you're not those people, you don't know. But you want to rule over those people as if you are better than them. The whole thing is supremacy. It's all based in being better than someone else. And if we lose grips on that, we don't have the same power. They say it openly, they say it blatantly. Every time, that's the purpose. It's to control someone else. And I guess they don't have to even hide it anymore.
I mean, I was just gonna say, I think it also, and I agree with Cenk that I do not support an $886 billion defense package. And I think we can understand and leave our critiques of the military aside and realize that trans people, people of color, people who serve, women, people who serve in the military, whether or not we agree with every single thing that the US military does, they are people. End of story. And they have rights within the military just like anyone else does. And to Cenk's point about like, yeah, the recruitment numbers are down. It's the same thing that MAGA says when they're like, oh, immigrants are stealing their jobs. Oh, really? You wanna wake up at 4 in the morning to work, a meat processing plant or an egg farm? Oh no, you wanna leave that for like 13-year-olds or 12-year-olds. Right, we get it. Like, no, there aren't enough straight white cis men to like replace the troops that are needed. Hey, maybe we just like, wind the whole thing down, if you ask me in my leftist brain. But still, it is really disgusting. And I just want to note, the Defense Department and military generals have all agreed that diversity among their ranks is not only the reality, but it is very beneficial. And those DEI programs, diversity, equity, inclusion programs, are also beneficial. And why? Because you saw January 6th, man. The number of white supremacists that are also have military ties or like were vets and whatnot. Like, you don't think the military is combating this on a daily basis? They need for a cohesive unit, right? Ergo, they need things like programs and anti-racist stuff. They need sensitivity trainings. They need everyone to be pulling in the same direction, right? So it's interesting that like, again, Republicans are basically arguing to disintegrate the functionality of the US military. Well, there's more, obviously. It's not gonna pass in this form in the Senate, right? So it's expected, and this is according to Politico, that these controversial provisions will be watered down and it'll make it more palatable for the Democrats who control the Senate. And this is Minority Whip Catherine Clark saying, we know this bill is going nowhere in the Senate because it's disgusting and it's outrageous. So we will have the chance to work with the Senate and bring a national security bill back that we can support. My guess is it'll still be the same number though, which I think we all have some issues with. But I want to move to this because there was probably kind of the most egregious moment of the entire debate on this National Defense Authorization Act, and that moment was owned by one Eli Crane. Take a look.
My amendment has nothing to do with whether or not colored people or black people or anybody can serve, okay? It has nothing to do with color of your skin, any of that stuff. What we want to preserve and maintain is the fact that our military does not become a social experiment.
So that was Representative Eli Crane of Arizona speaking to his amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act, using the term colored people. That's right, the year 2023, and right out of Jim Crow. So he apparently said that he misspoke. He was asked for comment. He said he misspoke, but immediately after he misspoke, Representative Beatty did not let him she didn't miss a beat to interject and have what he said stricken. Take a look.
I'd like to be recognized to have the words colored people stricken from the record. I find it offensive and very inappropriate.
Can I amend my comments to people of color?
Mr. Speaker, to have the word stricken. I didn't ask for an amendment.
Is there unanimous consent to have the word stricken?
Yes. Without objection, so ordered.
Without objection, so ordered.
Could I get a do-over? Could I get a quick do-over? No do-overs. Okay. So right, it was stricken from the record unanimously. Kevin McCarthy actually was asked about Eli Crane's comments there, and this is what he had to say.
Speaking of Congressman Crane, what is your reaction to his remarks yesterday on the floor referring to African Americans as colored? I know he said that he misspoke, but is that acceptable?
That's not acceptable. I'll take him at his word that he misspoke. I have never heard him use that before, so you'd have to ask him about that.
I've never heard him use that word before. That was an interesting sort of like, hey, behind closed doors, he doesn't say this. So I'm pretty sure he doesn't have a racist bone in his body. But Cenk, JR.
Wait, it almost implies that others do. Like he's like, oh, right, him. Right. No, I haven't heard him say it. Like, ask me about 28 other guys. Okay, and I like.
Don't ask him about immigrants though, because he's got other choice words.
Yeah, I like the excuse if he misspoke. Like at first I was like, misspoke how? Like, did you mean coloring people? Because they like to color things in? What do you mean? How did you misspeak? It's not like I meant to say black and I said colored people. I like his cover up though of like, well, people of color is what I meant. Really? Because that's that's almost a respectful term. And it didn't look like you were going in that direction, okay? And so now look, I'm the last guy to say, bash people for misspeaking. So the question is, did he misspeak or did he not misspeak? Because if he misspoke, okay, it's terrible, awful, but all right, we're gonna survive, right? But no, I don't think he misspoke. I think he did it to get attention, because that's the game that's being played in Congress right now. Who's gonna say something more outrageous, more awful, more hideous to get more media attention? And then go, oh, golly gee, did I say that word? Well, I guess I must have misspoken. So, and how do I know that? Now, of course, nobody knows for 100% certainty, but listen to the other things he was saying. He was saying like this idea of diversity and inclusion. What are we doing, social experiments now? Okay, so gee, I wonder which one he meant.
Yeah, it's the thought process. So, okay, so no one really knows, but in my mind, misspeaking is when President Obama was in office and then Osama bin Laden was around, and sometimes people would say Obama, Osama. It sounds very close to the same, obviously, right? But in this particular case, we don't fully know. Kevin McCarthy said even like, I don't know what's in his heart. So again, fine, but let's go off of the things that he's going with. He's looking to push this kind of legislation, which again is very discriminatory and outcasts certain people. So let's take it for that part. Sure, the misspeaking we can show as an illustration as to why that's his thought process. But let's go and get to the meat and potatoes of what it is that he's trying to do and why he's trying to do it. Maybe if you ever hung around folks, maybe a little more diversity around you, you would know, maybe not have that issue of misspeaking and calling them colored folks instead of people of color or anything like that. So it goes back to the same thing from earlier. Maybe if you surround yourself with people or you are exposed to other people who are different than you, you'll pick up on some of the things that people say, where they come from and why you don't do or say certain things. And that leads you to be this weird thing, which is a better person, an American that actually gets along with some other folks and actually has a surrounding of Americans, this melting pot of different cultures that we continue to try and separate and make and act like it doesn't really exist. It's just the process, it's the approach, it's on purpose.
Can I just say one quick thing, Franny?
Yeah.
The whole stricken from the record thing is a tiny point, but I always find it funny. Like, we all heard it. What difference does it make if you struck it from the record? But they take it so seriously. Yeah. It is now stricken from the record. It does not exist. Except for
I say leave it in, right? To remind us of the fact that we have progressed so little that people are still saying colored people, right? I do want to get to those meat and potatoes just briefly. What was the amendment Crane was pushing? And it's exactly what we've been talking about. So it prohibits, and it passed, the Defense Department from considering race, gender, religion, political affiliations, or any other ideological concepts as the sole basis for recruitment, training, education, promotion, or retention decisions. Sure, because that existed, the sole basis. We all have heard of that. The military, this is what he says, and pay attention, was never intended to be, inclusive. Its strength is not diversity. Its strength is its standards, said Crane, who is also a combat veteran. Must have been real popular. I feel like the opposite of its strength is not its diversity is strength. Diversity is a weakness. And I think that that's what a lot of coded GOP language is around anti-woke stuff, which I would just openly call racist. It's racist legislation, and to say that our strength is not our diversity is another way of saying no, we should all be the same. And we're kind of flirting with Nazism here. Like we're flirting with all sort of falling in line, being the same religion, being of the same social class. And I just want to go to Representative Stephen Horsford, who echoed what JR just mentioned by the fact that you even said colored people, whether a mistake or not, says a lot. Take a look.
Just an hour ago on this very floor, one of the members on the other side of this body said his amendment, quote, had nothing to do whether colored people or black people can serve, unquote. Mr. Speaker, these comments show exactly why we need diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Every day, our military grows more diverse, more and more reflecting the diversity of our nation. This amendment does nothing to address the recruitment shortfalls that our services are facing, and instead it will only make it more difficult to recruit Americans on diverse backgrounds, representing the true makeup of our nation. What are you so afraid of? Why do you keep bringing these divisive issues to the body of this floor? You are out of order. You are exhausting, Mr. Gates.
What are you so afraid of, JR? I'm pretty sure you just said that. What are they so afraid of?
Yeah, others. Yeah, so look, I want to address this diversity thing. So the Republicans have started to say this, and the first guy to say it was Tucker Carlson. And I remember thinking like, wow, he said that on TV. Like, now they're going like to the complete and extreme end of the spectrum. There's no coded words left, there's nothing left anymore. This guy's bringing colored people back, right? This crazy Eli Crane guy. So let me do a tiny bit of ode to diversity. And now by that I mean every type of diversity. Like if you're trying to, I've put together a lot of teams, whether it's in media, politics, business, etc. And if you're not aiming for diversity of thought, you are really damning that project, whatever that project is. Because the more diversity of thought there is, the better off the team is going to be. And everybody knows this from like everyday life. Like if you watch basketball, right? What do you need? Do you need all shooters? There's a lot of teams that go for all shooters and they're all disasters. You know why? You need diversity. So in the old days, you used to all go for big men, right? And they were disasters. No, you need a big man, you need somebody getting rebounds, you need a shooter, et cetera, right? And so that brings strength to a team. And everybody understands that concept when you say it about sports, right? Is it also true on racial grounds? Well, again, let's stick with basketball. In the old days, they thought having racial diversity would hurt the team. How'd that turn out? And I'll tell you how it turned out. One of the legendary games was in college basketball, and Kentucky was like the greatest team. But back then it was segregated, so they had all white team, and they finally decided they were going to play a black team, and they like thought, well, all right, we'll do the kids a favor here, and well, we'll show them you don't need diversity, right? Of course, as you know how this story's going to end, they got their ass handed to them, and everybody was like, what? It turns out these guys are good at basketball? I mean, it sounds hilarious now, right? But that's what every time what people say when they argue against diversity. Oh, we don't need blacks in the military. We don't need gay people in the military. What would you do with that kind of diversity? And he's literally saying it in the year 2023 now. I mean, it's sheer insanity.
Absolutely. And it's an argument, honestly, for resegregation. I mean, that's sort of where we're headed, right? And people, the civil rights movement. I mean, I know folks who were like conscientious objectors, but then also organized to like desegregate the stockade when they were, held for not going to war. I mean, like there is a long history. We're just rolling it all back. But I know we have to take our first break. Cenk, I'll hand it over to you.
Yes, so when we come back, Charlie Kirk says something. He could have said something true. Instead, he blew it and made it ridiculous and racist. So we'll explain all of that when we return. All right, let's go to Super Chat. Ezra Graves with a couple of devastating points. Ezra wrote in, yeah, somebody actually called me boy today at work, and not in the gender sense. In 2023, calling us colored Old South behavior. So, look, I told you about the podcast we did with Brian Unger on Old School earlier this week. If you're a member, you guys can get it anytime you want. And he had a very similar story. I won't give away the ending to it and how it came up, but I was just floored by it. Like, year 2023, people are still calling black folks boy. Look, man, we all live in different bubbles, and that's why, like, since that doesn't happen in my bubble, I'm floored every time I hear it. It's just nuts. Ezra also wrote in, also, colored wasn't simply a slur. At one time, it was our legal designation. That's true, and also devastating and correct and factual and all of those things. Okay, I'm gonna go to YouTube member comments now. Trisha Briggs says 32 months and countless more to come. Just wanna say thank you to all at TYT. Hope you don't underestimate your impact on the world. Well, thank you for saying that, Trisha. You're always wonderful. Dookie the Uper Dragon, which is already interesting, writes in, been watching TYT since the beginning of the pandemic. Great community and responsible reporting. Love me some TYT. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate every one of these comments. On Twitch, Love8 What Girl writes in, a shout out from the power panel would be an awesome gift for my birthday this Sunday. Just happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
And we just did it.
And shout.
So now, real quick programming notes. Like I told you, Podcasting Network, Francesca's show, Habituation Room. Check that out. It's audio only, so you got to go to the Podcasting Network for that. And then we have all the other shows. Progress Report, tyt.com/newsletter. It's a great newsletter, the only progressive newsletter. And people rave about it. tyt.com/newsletter, or you could use that QR code. Hurry up, because I'm gonna do the next one. Check out Dr. Richie on Sirius on the weekends, channel 126. And that is Sirius XM Urban View, and it's Sundays at 10 a.m. Eastern. That doesn't make sense. That drives me crazy every time. No, it does make sense. Okay, my bad. They changed it. Okay. Anyway, check out SiriusXM Urban View. All right, and then one more thing about Dr. Richie. He's got a great op-ed on affirmative action on rollingout.com. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Franny, and JR with you guys, but also I'm gonna try this. Ifechiniera Agbodike, thank you for joining, appreciate it. You got a name almost as hard as mine, so welcome. They hit the join button below the video. You can join that way if you're on YouTube, or you can go to tyt.com/join. All right, Francesca, what do you got?
Well, House Republicans, ever since regaining control, have been hell-bent on Hunter Biden's D-pics and other things like government spending that's out of control, spending on things like food stamps so people can eat. Anyway, but now they are proposing something different. In fact, they want spending when it comes to giving themselves a raise. That's right. They are leading the charge to give themselves more money. That's amazing, isn't it? Can you believe they're actually openly doing this? So under the legislative branch spending bill approved by the House Appropriations Committee last month, House members would receive a 4.6% pay raise, according to the Congressional Research Service reports roll call. It would be an $8,000 raise over their current salaries of $174,000 a year. Let's look at what is in the bill and see what is not in the bill. What are they stripping out in order to give themselves this raise? So if they get their way, the raise would come in a bill that also cuts spending across the board, except for defense and veterans care and border militarization, but it drastically decreases funding for public programs and the social safety net, including cuts to critical anti-poverty programs like Social Security, Medicare, and free school lunches. Remember those pesky free school lunches? Also, Social Security and Medicare, remember how they promised Biden they wouldn't do that? It would also, according to a new draft of the Labor, Health, and Education Funding Bill released Thursday, eliminate federal funding for public health research on issues like firearm safety and ending HIV while slashing, ending HIV, so research on ending HIV, while slashing education department funding by 28%. So that they, I mean, look, it's not one-to-one. I'm sure the money's coming from elsewhere, but this is what they are openly proposing. The House Legislative Branch Appropriations Chairman actually gets how bad this looks. He says, quote, having been around a few campaigns in my life, do you think that campaign consultants who are geniuses, do you think they'll be able to tee that one up? You know, Bob Smith voted for an $8,000 raise while he cut your blah, blah benefits. Yeah, he's not a serious person, but I like how blase he's taking this whole thing. Interestingly, actually, the House of Reps hasn't gotten a raise since 2009, which is coincidentally the last time the federal minimum wage was raised. Again, $7.25 an hour, which means if you're doing the math, Truth Out did it for us. A worker would have to work over 1,100 hours or over a half a year, assuming a 40-hour work week, in order just to be paid the same amount as the raise the Republicans are seeking to give themselves next year. So, hey, it's not enough money for them to do nothing, to slash critical programs, and also to investigate Hunter Biden and his many, many illustrious images.
Yeah. So look, the fact that they do nothing is maddening. I'm going to come back to that in a second. First, these raises for public officials, generally speaking, I actually don't mind them, because you want to pay public officials well enough so that they don't take bribes. The problem with our system is that's all they ever do is take bribes. Like, we legalized it, so they'd be crazy not to take it. So now we call them campaign contributions. Yeah, they funnel some of that money to themselves, but they mainly put it in their campaigns so that they can get reelected and have more power, so they can give themselves raises and other things along those lines. So in this intensely corrupt system, when you say, hey, I want to give myself an $8,000 raise, but I'm going to cut your Social Security and I'm going to cut education for your kids by 28%, my answer to that is hell to the no. Not even close. But when you throw in minimum wage, they haven't raised it since 2009. It's at $7.25. And look, I want you to understand the magnitude of that quote that Franny just read you, okay? So if you work the whole year at minimum wage, the federal minimum wage, you have to spend about 7 months or so to get to $8,000. So they're saying we'd like to give ourselves a raise, but not you a raise in minimum wage. And you have to work 7 months just to get to my raise, let alone the $174,000 I already make. That is disgusting.
This is a question though. So for all the conservative voters out there, we had the midterms, we keep talking about the red wave that didn't happen. They talked about inflation, they talked about education costs. They talked about maybe, actually they didn't, but the other things that affect your life. The around the dinner table conversations, childcare, healthcare, the cost of groceries. They talked about baby formula, all these things that happen. So if you're making $7.25 an hour and your annual income is just more than $15,000, How much do they give a damn about all those things that they said you have to take care of? How much do they actually care about the source for your problems? Or do they just want you to complain about your problems so you can then run back to them and say, hey, you guys actually complain about all of our problems? They are cutting off a way that you can come out of some of those problems, or even just maybe manage them a little bit better. Because by the way, raising the minimum wage up to, let's say, $10 an hour still isn't gonna cut it because of all these other costs and them allowing corporations, companies, whoever else to gouge you even further on these types of topics, right? So we have that, and then when they've raised their own, they expect you to keep looking at them and going, well, that's okay, they're a congressman. They're pretty much letting you buy into this hierarchical society that they deserve these types of raises when you don't deserve anything. They act like if you actually want something to do with being a part of your economy, being part of the American dream, that you're being selfish, that you're overreaching your lot in life. And we're buying that. We're buying it. And we're just saying, yeah, I'll take that, give you more of my money. Where do you think the $8,000 for each of them is gonna come from? Where do you think it's coming from? Do you think it's coming from your taxes that you're not getting anything back for? That anybody who says, hey, I should maybe get something for this, they go, how dare you? You know you're an American, the greatest country in the history of the world that has citizens that are struggling. Where does it make any sense? Somehow we keep buying it.
Or that they have the authority to do that for themselves. Like what other worker? Like you work for us, you know? Is there HR here? Where's the parliamentarian that can be like, you know, you actually can't just give yourself an $8,000 raise without giving other people a raise too. It's just so funny. But look, if it supports Marjorie Greene's, you know, podcast, that's exciting. You know, it's important work.
Okay, they don't even work. That's exactly right.
They don't work.
They take all of August off. I ran for Congress and I checked their schedule. They barely work half the year. And then more to Franny's point, Marjorie Taylor Greene complained she works too hard. Okay, come on. And then on top of that, you're gonna give yourself an $8,000 raise and then say, in the same bill, but we're gonna cut money for you. It just doesn't get any more disgusting than that. So there you go, the United States Congress, a good example of it. All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, that Charlie Kirk story we promised you. No, that's not all. 3 fire emojis. So this is a 3 alarm fire, okay?
Try not to yell. I feel like I've been yelling. Every time I say something.
No, trust me, you're not yelling. Young Turks viewers know what yelling is, and that ain't it. All right, Wolf Dragon Donna says, you think that we should all be at the point where nothing floors us anymore, but I'm still constantly floored, and I'm a lot older than you, Jank. Unbelievable, all of it. It is unbelievable, and thank you for I don't know if you're supporting Wolfpack, but it sounded like it, and I appreciate that. Shadowhawk writes in, how's your baby doing, Fran? Good question.
She's adorable.
Adorable.
Yeah, she's good. 9 months, going strong.
Wow.
All right, adorbs, I think is what the kids call it.
Yeah.
Hedgehog Dragon wrote in, has Manchin ever pretended to be a Democrat? In my 10 years of following politics, I've never seen anything that could be called a Democratic move by him. I will tell you this one quick thing though, we're the fairest show in America. Manchin does vote with the Democrats on a lot of logistical stuff and including on the judges. So yes, he greatly frustrates us and I pretty much hate him. He's incredibly corrupt, but I'm also giving you the parts where he does vote with the Democrats from time to time. And so that's why the Democrats always say, no, we can't lose Manchin. Okay, Art Guy writes in about a line I used earlier in the show, a long walk off a short coal mine is the gold standard comedy I've come to expect from Cenk. Well, thank you. Okay, Quirky Makes on YouTube member section says, I've been watching TYT for 10 years at least, and it's very discouraging when year after year, all the same things, and I've yet to see any real progress. Don't I know it? Okay, so I'm gonna try something new to try to give you guys hope. Wish me luck with it. I'll unveil it later.
Uh-oh.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Francesca, JR with you guys, but also Bryson Dean and Nathan S. Nucleus. They just both became members and hence do the show with us. You can do likewise by hitting the join button below, or if you're not on YouTube, tyt.com/join. Francesca's got the next story.
Yeah, I just apologize in advance, but you were told there'd be Charlie Kirk, and there is. Here we go.
You really have to wonder. In fact, if we would have said 3 weeks ago, Blake, if we would have said that Joy Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called the racist. But now they're coming out and they're saying it for us. They're coming out and they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. You had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken somewhat seriously. Play cut 52.
Oh, there's Charlie Kirk going on what I would call an incredibly, I guess, disrespectful would be the least I could say. Racist would be what I would like to say. Rant about affirmative action, given that it was struck down by the Supreme Court. Y'all already won, so I don't know why you're mad. But there we go. And specifically reacting to the fact that prominent black leaders inside of the halls of power, Michelle Obama, former First Lady, Ketanji Brown Jackson, current Supreme Court Justice, have actually spoken out about how affirmative action helped them get into Ivy League schools and get them to where they are. But no, obviously Charlie Kirk proving that white people's fifis were more important. So here he goes with clip 52 or 25 or whatever it is. Sheila Jackson Lee talking about her own experience with affirmative action.
But I rise today as a clear recipient of affirmative action, and particularly in higher education. I may have been admitted on affirmative action, both in terms of being a woman and a woman of color, but I can declare that I did not graduate on affirmative action. This is my personal story.
I hear because of action affirmative. She can't even say that. We know. It's very obvious to us that you were not smart enough to be able to get in on your own. I couldn't make it on my own, so I needed to take opportunities from someone more deserving. This is how arrogant Joy Reid and Ketanji Brown Jackson and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee are. They're so narcissistic, they think this is persuasive.
Yes, spoken like a man who dropped out of junior college himself. There we go, y'all. That's that beautiful specimen. Take it away.
Okay, can I go? Here we go.
Please.
This is a big example of the complete misunderstanding of what affirmative action is for, why it was there, what it does about our previous life and our history, which of course, as we've seen much legislation, specifically in Ron DeSantis' Florida, to cover that up. Because if you actually understand the history of our country and the systemic racism that's been around since the beginning, that remains today, you'd understand why it's there. So apparently, according to them, affirmative action is only based off people who don't deserve it, aren't qualified, are too stupid, can't make it, because they're ignoring the fact that the system has held people back. So if you can't get in, but the people that are admitting people that are in hate you because of who you are, that's not being smart enough. That's being discriminated against by the people that talk like this guy, that like to say, you can't do what white people can do because you're an effing racist, number one. Number two, if it's taking a white person's spot, you're admitting that you've already put white people in these places before they're there. How do you know that they're qualified? How do you know they're smart enough? It doesn't matter, they're white. You said it, I didn't. If it's their spot and not someone else's, you've given it to them before you've ever met them. How do you know they're qualified? It's the same reason why you say all these black folks are unqualified because they benefited from it. And you notice which Supreme Court justice he didn't say benefited from affirmative action, who effing did? The guy who agrees with everything that everybody on the Republican side and conservatives tell him to agree with. Weird how that guy wasn't a part of the affirmative action, too stupid to make it, but he was still beneficial from it. But what he did do was pull that ladder away once he was in that position so no one else can make it. And then they go, congratulations, let's pat him on the top of the head. Good job, brother. And by the way, this last flex that he's talking about, how they're too stupid to get it, oh my God, they don't understand it. Bro, everything you say is the most projection type of sentence that it could be put out there. But still, ironically, you're too stupid to get that part.
Yeah. So I want to say a number of different things here. First of all, when he said they don't have the mental power, I loathe this guy. Dude, I almost never bring up that he didn't go to college, right? Charlie Kirk didn't. And then he was trying to influence kids in college. That's why his organization was set up in the first place. But when you're a preschool graduate, don't come and talk about these women that way, okay? Sheila Jackson Lee graduated from Yale University and then went on to law school and is incredibly accomplished. Ketanji Brown Jackson graduated magna cum laude from Harvard University and cum laude from Harvard Law School. So I'm gonna pause there. So let's say that she got in because of affirmative action. Magna cum laude at Harvard, Charlie, give it a shot, see how it turns out for you, okay? That means once she went to Harvard, she killed it. She did so much better than the other students. And it goes on and on for all of those students, but it never works in convincing the Charlie Kirks of the world because he's a natural born racist. So he's like, oh, magna cum laude, that means she outworked everyone and was smarter than everyone at Harvard. But she's not white, you know what I'm saying? Loser, barely made it out of preschool. If you learn something, then you might understand how things work in the world. And they always do this. Barack Obama, he's the head of the Harvard Law Review. Head of the Harvard Law Review is head of the law review in any school means you're the top student. So he got in there affirmative action and then became #1. That's an argument for affirmative action, not against affirmative action. And by the way, I don't even believe in affirmative action, and he almost convinced me that I should. Okay, so this guy's so disgusting. And then
I think JR just did that.
Yeah, well, that too. And by the way, another one of our hosts, Rashad Ritchie, brilliant op-ed on affirmative action in favor of it. Check it out on rollingout.com. Okay, so now look, guys, I got a unique opinion on it. I think that what I hate is that rants like that, of course, doesn't work on rational people like us, but it devalues all of our accomplishments, all minorities, all accomplishments, and I loathe that they say things like that about all of us. And then unfortunately, for a lot of people in America, it works. Okay, but that's another conversation and a much larger one. But last thing, so Michelle Obama, he mentions her, and I was like, she took a white person's slot? I I'm like, why?
There was a whole audition process.
But of course, in reality, it's not about being first lady. She went to Princeton University. That's because, and law school at Harvard. You know how you get in law school at Harvard? By doing really great at Princeton, okay? And she was at a gifted school for high school students. You know why? Because she's gifted. And all that Charlie Kirk and the right wing does here is damage their own cause. Because anybody that watches that goes, well, if that racist piece of crap is against affirmative action, then I must be for it. So nicely played, Charlie Kirk, you moron. All right, we gotta go. Bonus episode is gonna be fun, believe it or not, after this. tyt.com/join, we'll see you there.
You know, old school's pitched to me from Jake. It'll just be me, you, Jesus, Ben, and maybe Michael. And we're like, okay, cool. I can do that every week. As you can see, me, Jesus, Ben.
When you make the order, it says, don't exceed $20.01. So I'll just order literally anything to get it as close to that as I possibly can.
I'm sorry that I ordered $45 worth of food and got an email saying, sir, would you like to rethink that? What are you talking about?
I was in hell. I was just like, oh my God, the theater's empty, nobody's here. Everyone on screen keeps fucking cursing. Why did I let this happen? And the whole thing looks like it was shot through a glass of milk. My mom's gonna be so mad.
If you're looking for a heart attack the short way, baby.
Wrong, I did put mayonnaise on it. I'm the most in shape, overweight person you'll find.
That's right.
He was like, why didn't you answer my call? I called you 39 times.
Yuck. But what makes you stop right before 40? What makes you say, nah, man, I ain't doing that no more. I'm cool.
And I called you back on the air. And I was like, okay, Kevin Smith, big shot. What the you said you'd come on and you didn't come on.
I'm sure I took that very well.
Yeah, you did. You called me back the next day and said, I thought it was 7 a.m. And there's now deep fake porn. I don't know if you guys have heard of this.
Heard of it? I just had some in the car.
I'll tell you who I'm not f***ing, Ben Mankiewicz.
Have you guys ever felt that?
Not ever.
And now it's just the three of us.
This is the intimate hour.
By the way, the last half hour of this, we're not even rolling.
Fair enough.
Kingsley.
See, I watch movies.
I'm done with both of you.
Once Craig starts laughing, I can't stop. And I was just gonna ask you about getting high.
Snoogans, Snoochie Boochies, and members, of course, you can get the whole damn thing. tyt.com join and free trial. I'm old school with the old folks.
Good.
John, come back.
Everywhere you look, things are getting more expensive. Here at TYT, we understand this. That's why we're not gonna price gouge you or use inflation as an excuse to raise our prices. A TYT membership is not your typical subscription, but basic membership is still just $4.99. So what do you get for that price? For starters, you're getting exclusive programming, unique, exclusive designs from Shop TYT, access to a members-only chat, giveaways, emojis, and so many other amazing perks. But most importantly, you're helping to make an impact. As a TYT member, you not only help us do the shows every day, but you drive real positive change in the process. In 2017, we helped to start Justice Democrats right here on TYT. That's a group that got 12 progressives elected into Congress. That's amazing, you did that. Your support also funds TYT's very own investigative reporting. Just recently, our reporters exposed the Fellowship Foundation and pressured lawmakers into boycotting that bigoted event. Isn't that amazing? We raised over $30,000 for Jackson, Mississippi, and delivered clean water to thousands of people in need. Our petitions, polls, and community of activists help keep the corruption of Washington in check. That's the impact of what just $4.99 a month from our members can do. And we're just getting started. Positive change doesn't occur overnight, but with your contribution, we can make it happen together. We've been around for about 20 years, and we have about 20 billion views. Am I proud of that? Hell yeah, I am. We put out 20 billion messages in a bottle. Have we helped to move now 2 generations, millennials and Gen Z, to become progressive? Yes, those numbers are real. We moved generations. Were we the only ones? Of course not. But we have been the largest online news show for now decades.